Welcome to the Twinkle Talks EYFS podcast. Working in the early years is busy, funny, messy, and exhausting. Join me, Shána, some of the Twinkle EYFS team, special guest speakers, and other early years practitioners as we talk honestly about our experiences. Whether you're listening for CPD, on your commute, or to help you relax, Twinkle EYFS will share everything you need to know about all things early years. Hi, Becky. So
Hello.
great to have you on the podcast. Thank you for joining us. For our lovely listeners who have not heard your wonderful voice before, please tell us who you are and your role at Twinkle and your experience in education.
Oh, fabulous. Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm Becky Dawson. I am the National Wellbeing Lead for Twinkle, which basically means I get to bang on about my passion, which is wellbeing for children and young people, but also for the people that support them. So my background is in secondary education. Actually, I was a secondary school teacher for over 16 years in mainstream education, but then went to work for a local authority and working for primary and secondary settings, sort of looking at a whole organisation approach to mental health and wellbeing. That did include EYFS settings. And for the last few years have been running my own company, really with a focus on upskilling people to support children and young people in their settings and in their lives. I've done a lot of work with parents as well, but also to look after themselves, which is a key theme of what I do, because you can't look after someone else if you don't look after yourself.
No, and I think a lot of our listeners will be very excited to listen to this episode because and it is important, of course, well-being of children. It's PSED is one of our prime areas in early years for a reason. We spend so much time focusing on supporting the children, and no doubt, Becky, we'll be back for another podcast episode on how to do that even better. But today, it's all about the staff, the educators, the people behind these children in their formative years, and supporting our well-being, especially when it comes, it's important at any time of year, really. But if, early years, it's full on all the time. You have assessments at the beginning of the year, the middle of the year, the end of the year, report writing, transition, settling. I mean, the list goes on. So we need to look after ourselves, right?
I mean, 100%. It's a really old adage, but it's the oxygen mask, isn't it? You know, when you're on a plane and you're off to a holiday, they say, if you're going to put the oxygen mask on, put it on yourself first before you put it on your children, because we cannot do what we need to do if we don't look after ourselves. And I can speak from, personal experience here. The reason I left mainstream education was because I burnt out. I wasn't able to cope. I was a special educational needs coordinator, and it all just got a bit too much. I lost myself and had young children, and I did not prioritize my well-being. So a lot of the work I do comes from hard learnt lessons of what I don't want other people to go through. And whilst my experience was in secondary, I've got lots of colleagues and friends who are in the early years sector who talk about those challenges, who talk about the fact that it's just go, isn't it? You're just constantly, you could be doing, you're not having a lunch break and this break and what have you. It's just the pressure on you to be on all the time is huge. And so it's really important that we're thinking about our well-being.
Yeah, and I think, especially coming from an early years perspective, there are unique challenges that we may face in our sector that might not necessarily show themselves in other sectors in education. But speaking to your friends, like what kind of stuff have they told you are the challenges of looking after their well-being in early years?
Well, I think like we've already touched on it, is that, as soon as you walk through the door, you're on, you're in. It's not like, not that I ever did this with my secondary classes, but there are times when you could just give them a task for 5 minutes if you're having a tough day, and you can set that task and go, okay, I'm just going to sit here and cry quietly into my cup of tea. You really can't do that in early years, because you've always got someone, a child, needing attention in some way. And I think that's really challenging. You've also got that really difficult interface between parents and carers dropping off their child to you, often for the first time. The emotional toll that can take, the separation anxiety. I feel sorry for the people that I dropped my youngest off to at nursery for the first 3 weeks, because they did just scream the place down. And we all know that they're fine in the end, but it's hard. It's a
Yeah.
lot. It takes a lot of emotional. It can be emotionally draining. And I just, when you're a teacher in secondary school, often you're a subject teacher, aren't you? You're teaching English, maths, etc. Although I would argue that all teachers are pastoral teachers as well. But by early years, you've got to do it all, haven't you? You've got to get them walking, talking, singing, dancing, eating. There's
pooing,
all of the pooing, all of the things.
Yeah.
So there's a huge amount of pressure, and I think, it can be really challenging. And we're not talking about small groups here, and we're talking about young people all over the place. They're not sitting behind desks and kind of quietly listening, which wasn't always the case in my drama lessons anyway. But there's a lot.
Yeah, it really is. And I experienced all of those when I was in early years as well. It's just constant, and it's a very physical job. I think, unlike maybe the older years, because you are running around after them quite a bit, which is fine because they're active and that's what we want. But it does mean you sort of have to be physically on it all the time. And I know it might seem like small things, but literally the small things. So we have smaller tables, smaller chair, like everything is at the child's level, which is again great. But for you as an adult, trying to get on a teeny tiny chair, trying to bend, like it is physically quite straining. And then in terms of the emotional side of it, like September was always the most challenging time for me, because like you say, we know that children, it is a massive step for them to go from their home into a setting. And we work so hard on trying to make sure that the children feel safe, the parents and carers know that they are safe as well as their children, and providing that safe space for everyone else. You forget about yourself entirely. Like, who's there to pick up you? Because as much as it's not the kid's fault, absolutely isn't, but having a child scream for the entire session really does affect you, and it's okay to say that.
Yeah, absolutely. Because our natural response is to want to be able to do something to support that child, and
Yeah.
sometimes you can't, because they
No.
just need time, don't they? They just need to get used to it. But it's really hard to go through in that short period.
You feel their emotion too. You can't say it doesn't affect. It does. I'm like, oh my gosh, this poor child. Like, of course, this is a traumatic event, and we want to do our best for them. But it's kind of a traumatic event for us as well, and that kind of doesn't get recognised as much, which is why you're here.
We haven't even talked about paperwork. I mean, the fact is that when you're at secondary school, the paperwork is hard, don't get me wrong. There's a lot of it, and there's report writing. But in early years, you're having to write down everything that I remember loving getting the reports of what my youngest had done day to day. And someone's got to write that. Someone's got to find the time to make those notes and keep those reports. And that's a lot alongside everything you're doing. We're not painting a very good picture of. It's a great role. We love it, but it's hard.
It is. I still stand by my job and loved every minute of it, and being with the kids. It's just being realistic about the struggles, and that it's okay to say that this is hard. And yeah, the documentation was what I was going to say next. However, I have to say it has improved. Ofsted have really supported early years educators in really cutting down that documentation. We don't need to have learning journals or, X amount of documentation for the child. Oh, a child blew their nose this morning. Write it down. Write a 3,000 word essay. Like, we don't need to do that. They do recognize that takes away from us being with the children, which is ultimately more important. But then exactly that, it's so much work. And also it's about ratio as well, because that's something, because they're so small and because they need so much more attention. It's usually like the ratio of 1 adult to 3 children if they're 3 years old, 1 adult to 4 children if they're 4 years old. And I had a nursery full of 44 kids, and it was just me and 2 other nursery nurses. We were in the legal limits, of course, that's not what I mean. But in terms of like making sure that we could give all the children the time that they deserve and need, it was just a lot.
And that's before we've even kind of factored in that some of those young people are going to have additional needs that maybe haven't been spotted or seen until they come into this setting. We know that young people with additional needs at home may not present in a way that they do once they come into the setting. So there's a lot to kind of keep an eye on.
Yeah, and I don't feel embarrassed about saying this, but it is a lot of pressure because everyone bangs on about it's the most important 5 years of a person's life, and it is, and I'm proud, but holy cow, it's almost a little bit like, yeah, if you mess this up now, it's gonna be messing them up for the rest of their lives, and it's petrifying, we're doing what we can. Yes, 90% of their brain is developed by the time they're 5 years old, so no pressure. And life skills and things like that, like you say, teaching them how to feed themselves, hold cutlery, wash themselves, take care of themselves, notice when they're feeling hungry or tired or poorly. Like, these are abstract things that we're having to teach children, which you might not get in another role, but it is rewarding. But it's important to recognize that actually, while we're doing this, we need to take care of our well-being as well. So what are the fundamentals that we should be looking at, Becky?
Well, I think the first thing is to be honest with yourself and recognize when things are getting tough. How many of us, and I think this is an education system wide approach where we're kind of martyrs to the, my children need me, I've got to be there and I've got to do everything. And I think one of the first steps is actually recognizing it's okay to say it's too much today, or I need something different, or I am not coping. And I think that's really important. It can feel really difficult. Like you talked about your class with 2 nursery nurses, and you not being in or not being in on top form will impact those other staff members. And I think quite often what we do as educators is say, well, I can't not be in the right place because it'll impact everyone else. And I think what happens is it's a bit of a catch-22, that when we don't spot the signs early and give ourselves a break or make changes that we need to make, it then gets worse, and then we potentially are off for longer if we do go off because we haven't kind of given ourselves the grace early enough to look after ourselves. So I think the first thing is being really aware of what are my signs that I'm not coping, or that things are getting difficult. And for different people that will be different things. So it might be being overly tired, but that's not necessarily a good indicator because isn't everyone in education tired?
Right? Just being an adult is tiring.
Yeah, exactly. Whenever I talk about mental health and wellbeing with any kind of group, be that parents, teenagers, children, I kind of think about those basics. Am I eating well? Am I sleeping well? Am I interacting with other people? And when those 3 things start to kind of wane for whatever reason, or aren't where they should be, that might be a sign that things aren't right. So rather than psychoanalyzing yourself and going, oh, have I got a mental health condition? That's not what we're talking about. We're saying, am I able to do the things I need to do to live my life? So eating, sleeping, interacting are the crucial things. We often find, particularly with connection, interaction, that's one of the first things to go when we're struggling. So am I reluctant to talk to colleagues? Am I kind of running off at the end of the day when normally I'd stay around for a cup of tea? What are the signs that I'm emotionally overloaded and therefore I'm not kind of interacting in the way that I normally would? And I think that's why it's really important that we have these conversations regularly, because having a colleague that you can go to and saying, do you know what, I just don't feel right at the moment, or I'm just feeling a little bit off, or them even spotting the sign and going, oh, normally we'd have a chat and I haven't spoken to you today. How are things? What's going on? So I think that can be the first most powerful step, is being okay with reflecting and thinking. I mean, checking in every day. How's today been? Is it a good day? What things are going on for me, and kind of making that part of your professional practice in some ways. One of the things I always talk about here is it's our professional responsibility to do this work as well. It's not a nice to have. It's not a fluffy add-on. It's what we need to do our job. It really is. So thinking about spotting those signs, and then it is trying to interrogate a little bit of what are the challenges I'm facing that are having the biggest impact. And I think the problem can be is making time to do that. And I know when I was really struggling, I would be at work, struggle, feel terrible, and then when I got home, I didn't want to think about work, and so I just switched off, and so I pretended it wasn't happening. So then
Yeah,
I just
I did too.
until the
I
next
zoned
morning
out.
until the next morning when I woke up, I went, oh God, I've got to do it again,
Mm,
and that just went on for a long
it's a
time.
vicious cycle, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. And so trying to break that cycle is hard,
Yeah.
but really really important, and thinking about what are the things that I am finding difficult. Now, if the organisation you work for has a whole organisation approach to mental health and well-being, which I believe all organisations should have, that should be there should be processes, there should be support networks, there should be things in place that mean that you can have those conversations, or that you can, some settings might have employee assistance programs, some settings might have opportunities for staff to kind of access wellbeing support. Not all, and the smaller settings absolutely probably can't afford that.
Mm,
That's the big challenge for early year settings. But also if you're a childminder, or doing that role in
yes.
isolation,
Yeah.
that's even more difficult, isn't it? So thinking about what other things are, so one, you've spotted that things aren't feeling right, you're not in the right place. Taking some time to actually think about what is it that is impacting me. And one of the simplest things we can do is just to get it all down on paper, get it written
Mm,
down, just everything that's in my head, put it on paper, and really think about what are the things that are causing me the most stress, the most worry, the most anxiety, whatever it is that are playing on my mind. And then one of the biggest things I talk about is thinking about control. What are the things on this list that I can control?
yeah.
What are the things that I can do anything about? So there will be things on the list like an Ofsted inspection, or new cohort coming in. You can't control those things. Those things are going to happen at some point. What can you control in that situation? With a new cohort coming in, it might be looking at our processes and getting to know those children as best we can before they come through the door, so that we are prepared for them, which all good settings are doing. With the Ofsted, again, it's just making sure that everything is in place, that asking for support to what that looks like. If it's the fact that you're not getting enough sleep, what are the things that you can do to improve that potentially? And some of them are really quick fixes, and some of them are take a lot longer. Some of them need support from other people. But actually just sitting down and trying to quantify what is going on, what's in my mind, in itself can be a really helpful process to
Mm,
kind of think about, okay, what are my next steps going to be? What do I need in this space?
yeah. And I think especially when you're in like the thick of the stress, that is what I definitely forgot, because I just remember my brain would be full of 1,000 things that I would need to do, right?
Yeah.
Jimmy needs this. See, oh, so and so's forgot their bag. I need to take this down to, oh, I need to put this on the register. Oh, I need to set up the, and then, oh, I've got so and so's meeting. I need to prepare this. Oh, that subject lead has asked me to do this. Oh, I need to go and speak to that parent because of the.
Mm.
There is our mental load. I don't think people talk about enough. The mental load is so big for educators, and not enough time, maybe perhaps from SLT, but like you say, if you're in smaller settings or you're a childminder, you haven't got anyone to support you in making someone put you in that priority list,
Mm.
because you need to be there. And when you're in that stressful moment and when you're in the thick of it, your brain just cannot, it just doesn't have the time or capability to process and be like, right, let's take a step back. You need to actively like practice that.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point, is that what we need to do is start doing these things when we don't need them. So like
Hmm.
at the end of every day, just going, right, what can I leave at work? What do I know needs to be done tomorrow? How do I kind of box this all up so I can go home and enjoy
Yeah.
time with my family or with my dog or whoever, so that I'm not thinking of these things. But if we don't do it as a matter of practice, then
Mm-hmm.
we won't do it when we're stressed, because that's a lot, because our brain is just in, fight or flight. It's in, what can I
Yes.
do to survive? What do I do to get through the next 10 minutes, the next hour?
Yeah.
Um, and actually, sometimes that's really useful. That's what we need, is like, I just need to get through the next bit, because if I think about tomorrow and next week, and it's going to be even worse. But at some point, we've got to break that cycle and say, okay, what can I leave? And I think being good enough. There's a big
Oh.
thing in parenting, in the parenting world, that's talked about is being the good enough parent. And I think sometimes we need to do that as educators. The trouble is, we've been kind of, indoctrinated into this outstanding, good,
Mm.
inadequate kind of approach, and so we never think that good is good enough. We're always thinking about what else we could do. But sometimes good does have to be good enough, because you are one person. You are just a human being doing your job, and you can't possibly do anything. I don't know there's anyone in education that feels like they could get to the end of the day and they've done everything they need to do. I just
Never,
don't
never.
ever. And but
Is that
so
a thing?
part of it is acceptance of that.
Mm,
Part of it is going, I can't do everything, so I'm
no.
going to do what I need to do, and then I'm going to draw a line under it, go home, come back the next day, and part of that is the acceptance of that. That also comes, the pressures from leadership as well, or if you're in leadership, pressures from everyone needing you to do certain things. But there is something about reframing our kind of panic around to-do lists to say, well, I can't physically do all of these things, therefore I'm going to prioritize.
Yeah. And I think as well, it's quite funny actually, because everything you said so far, I'm like, this is what we do with the kids.
Exactly, and that's the thing that makes me laugh, on, because so often I'm talking about stuff for teenagers and children, and people are picking things up for themselves. And often when I'm doing training around this, people are thinking, oh, yeah, I need to do that myself. There's no
Mm.
difference with the work I talk about today with you than the work I talk about with children and young people. It's exactly the same.
No. And it's one of those things, isn't it, where it's like we can do it for other people, but we just can't seem to do it for ourselves. And it's a challenging one. But that's why we're here. And that's why we got you, Becky, to help us. So I've heard about this thing. I'm not sure if I'm saying it right, like the 5 key things to
Five
start
ways
your
to
well-being.
well-being.
Oh,
Five
go.
ways to well-being. So the 5 ways to well-being are basically research-based things that over the years people have recognized are really good for our well-being. So if we can kind of make time for them, and there'll be some of them that you're brilliant at doing, some of them not so well. If we can do those 5 things, that can have an impact on our well-being. So the 5 things are: connect. So thinking about how we intentionally connect with people. That doesn't necessarily mean people we work with. I mean, if you're working in an early year setting, you're connecting constantly. That is about thinking about the people that you want to connect with. That's about making time to spend time socially with your friends that you might not make time to do because you're so busy, or it might be joining a running group or a choir, or something. So you're connecting with other people. You are engaging in connection that's not necessarily to do with your work, but that we know increases our well-being. And what we have to remember is, I'll talk through the other 4 in a minute. What we have to remember is that these things have long-term impact. So although it feels like, oh my God, I've got to go to choir practice tonight, but I still have X, Y, and Z to do. Well, if you do the choir practice, that will make you in a better place to do X, Y, and Z tomorrow. You need to do it. So it's those things.
Yeah, I think it's good to take them one at a time, because you're saying these things. I'm literally thinking as you're going, right, so how can we apply this to early years and all this stuff? Because connecting is important, but you made a very good point. I connect with 44 kids every single day,
Yeah.
okay? Like, I'm done connecting. I quite an introverted person as well. So
Mm,
I definitely feel like I put on this mask to
mm.
be that performer, to be that, fun Miss Walker for all the kids. And then by the end of the day, I'm absolutely shattered and I don't want to speak to anybody.
But that connection might be a WhatsApp group that you have with other early years educators. It might be the Facebook group. It might be just going onto the Facebook group and saying, oh, I've had a really long day, X, Y, and Z's happened, or whatever. It might be connecting in a different way. It doesn't mean going out and
Yeah.
doing jazz hands. It could be lots of lots of different things.
How do you know about
Connection.
my social life now?
I would just
Um,
imagine. So yeah, it could be lots of different things, but it is about reaching out and connecting with people in a different way.
Yeah, and it's about that balance, isn't it? Because yes, I'm connecting with these children, but it's not a balanced connection because they are relying on me more in that sort of high it's not hierarchy, but you know what I mean, that kind of roles that we're playing. It's definitely not a level playing field. So just making sure that you're getting that balance back and like, you know what, is someone taking care of you? Maybe someone's taking care of you. Maybe you're taking care of yourself, connecting with yourself.
Well, that's another point. Yeah, connection doesn't have to be with other people. It could be connecting with something you enjoy, connecting with yourself. And I remember when I was a Senko, my favourite times were network meetings. I mean, they were dull as ditch water, don't get me wrong. They were really boring. But the conversations I had with other Senkos at the table in between of, oh God, yeah, this is really tough, isn't it? Yeah, this job's really hard. And you guys will feel the same way in, connecting with other early years educators. And, that can make such a huge difference. So that's connect.
I love
Um,
that.
the next one is be active, which again, you might get to the end of the day and think, I don't want to be active. I don't want to do anything.
The amount of steps that we do.
Yes. So I think that's one to kind of take in context. I think be active is, if someone's well-being is so low that they're not getting up, they're not doing anything, they've got a very sedentary job and they're just kind of sitting around, we know that physical movement improves our mental health and well-being. So it could well be that you say, I've ticked that box, I've done 20,000 steps today. But it could also be about being active in a different way. It could be doing like having a kitchen dance when you get home. It could be, walking the dog. You've got dog. We've both got dogs. My walking dogs is one of the key things to my mental health and
Me
well-being
too.
because they will not take no for an answer. They don't care how lazy I'm feeling. They want to go for a walk.
It's
So
walk time, Becky. Come on.
exactly. So that is happening regardless. And we know that getting out and moving can be key. So it could just be like a 10-minute walk when you get home from work. But again, it's taken in context. If you're absolutely shattered, don't go and do a spin class. I'm not suggesting that at all.
And again, I think that is a unique challenge of early years because, like you've just said, for most people per se, it might not be that they're active during the day, but we are. And it's about that balance. And being active doesn't necessarily mean getting your heart rate up to the point where you're sweating. You know, you could do stretching. I think one of the things that really helped me was doing the stretching and the yoga and Pilates
Mm.
because of the bending down and the, using the smaller things. I knew I was physically active and I didn't need to like go for a run, but actually I needed to activate my muscles and my joints more because it was hurting me and I was getting a bad back and I couldn't be bothered to bend down all the time because it hurt. So, there's different ways of being active.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. The next one is take notice. And some people assume that is just mindfulness, and it can be. But what we mean by take notice is I think it kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier about understanding where we are and how we're feeling. But take notice is about actually taking the time to take in our surroundings. How often have you driven home from work? And I know I've done this and got home and gone, how did I get here? I don't
Yeah.
remember driving.
On
Because
autopilot.
you're in autopilot. And take notice is about taking the time to notice what's going on around you, notice the sounds, the sights, the things, actually sitting in your garden and just staring around you and looking at what you've got and taking that time to be present, which I know can sometimes be a bit woo, but it is about, we're always doing, aren't we? Always
Yep.
doing. And
Always thinking about the next step as well. Like,
sometimes taking notice is just like stopping and going, how am I feeling? What's going on for me? What do I need? So yeah, it could be mindfulness for some people. It could just be going for a walk without your headphones in and actually listening to the birds or whatever is going on around you, but being more mindful of what is around you rather than necessarily just being mindfulness.
yeah, because I think that's more not complicated, but there's more layers to it because it's sort of like
Hmm.
internal mindfulness, but also external at the same time, isn't it? It's like actually sometimes you need to take stock of you, like you say, like we do with the kids. How are you feeling, like emotionally, but also how is your body physically feeling?
Getting that
Maybe take notes of
interoception
that.
in. Yeah.
Yeah. as well as actually, let's take stock here. I've been running things in my mind because I've got X amount of assessments I need to do today and trying to figure out what I'm
Mm,
doing. I've been stuck in my head. Right, let's just take a minute. What can I see? What can I hear? What can I and it's like it's grounding, isn't it?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, can be really crucial, particularly if we just feel like we're on that hamster wheel and going,
Yes.
going, going.
And the overwhelm feeling when it starts to spin inside you and you're like, "Oh, I can't. I'm really stressed. It's like, whoop, ground."
And that taking notice can lead into gratitude, which is a whole other kind of
Mm,
area. But sometimes it can be really helpful to stop and go, right, I'm finding today really tough, but what's happened today that I'm proud of? What has happened today that I've enjoyed? What's happened? What have I got to look forward to? Sort of taking some time. We are hardwired to think negatively. We're hardwired to focus on the negative because when we were hunter-gatherers, that's the thing that kept us alive.
yeah.
But now we are still like that, and we don't need to be. So taking notice of things that we have that are good, taking notice, and that doesn't mean like saccharine sweet being, oh, I'm so grateful for everything I have, because some people have got it really hard at the moment,
It's
particularly,
toxic
you know
positivity, that, isn't
oh
it? We
yeah, we
don't
don't
wanna
want
go
any of that.
too
No, we don't want
yeah.
any of that. But we just want to go, okay, I'm finding this really tough, but I have got this and this and this that I'm looking forward to, or that I'm happy with, or that I'm enjoying, or little Tommy do X, Y, and Z today. So just trying to take some time, because we kind of wire our brain to do that. We've got two more left. So there's keep learning.
Oh,
Learning is very good for our mental health and well-being. There's
like,
lots of
anything
studies.
in specific or
No, not
just
really,
general?
no. I mean, there's lots of studies like in later life that people who learn new things and build new skills are less likely to develop dementia and Alzheimer's, or if they do, it can hold some of the symptoms off a little bit
Oh.
longer. It does need to be kind of new things necessary, but like learning a language, Duolingo,
I
something
was
like
just about to
that.
say, get the
Yeah,
Duolingo app on your
the
phone and do, like,
Duolingo app.
5 minutes. It's so
Yeah,
good.
I've got a little app where I just do crosswords every day. I'm not very good at them. There's a maths thing on there that terrifies me, but I know I'm not very good at it. So I practice, because it's a diff part of my brain I know doesn't get much use because my calculator's out all the time. But so like, keep learning doesn't necessarily mean do a PhD. It just means, I don't know, learn to crochet, it could be anything. But we know that when we are firing up those synapses to learn new things, it's really good for our mental health and well-being. Again, you get to the end of the day, a busy day, you might not want to be learning anything, but you might at the weekend like have a couple of
Mm.
hours to think of a new hobby or something that you want to do, or you know in researching a topic that's of interest that
Yeah,
you
my
don't know much
partner and I
about.
do that. So if we wanna go and, like, have an exciting weekend because 'cause we've got energy, we'll go to, like, a National Trust site because there's so many things that just fill us back up again when we go to a
Yeah,
National Trust site. Like, we'll have the outside space, we'll do all the walking, we'll do the connecting because there are just dogs everywhere. We have to say hi to all the dogs. But
obviously all dogs.
also yeah, yeah. We love the house side of it and going in and, like, looking at all these old houses and just learning about, like, who lived here and stuff like that, and it's so cool, and even if it's, like you say, maybe not sitting down reading a book or taking up a new skill, like going to a museum or going to
Yes, to
a
say most people got a museum or an art gallery or something near them, maybe that they, or just going to the library and picking up a book that you've read before, or anything like that. It's just good for our brains to
and
do those
it's fun.
things. It is fun. It's fun to learn. Um, and then the final one is give. Now, again, this might be controversial, because I think probably lots of people listening to this feel like, I give everything. I give all of my
Literally, like,
yes,
I'm
I give
giving my
my
life to
lifeblood.
these children. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. But again, lots of research tells us that when we give to others, it increases our well-being. In fact, when I was working in Newham, we did a mentoring program, and we trained up year 10s and 11s to mentor younger students, over year 10s actually. And actually, the outcomes were better for the mentors than they were for the mentees, because you could see that they were doing something for someone else. They were giving up their time, and it made a big difference. So there is something about giving. Now, again, any of these things we're talking about can be at one end or another. You could volunteer. Some people might volunteer every week for something. Some people might just go and give some of their things to a charity shop. it might be, I don't know, giving some money to someone on the street. There's lots of different things that giving could be. But it is about being conscious of saying, okay, I'm going to do something for someone else.
I was just about to say that. I think the conscious part is the important bit of it because, and again, quite rightly, people might be thinking, "Oh, well, actually, I give everything. Sometimes I just want it. My weekends and my evenings are for me." And you are totally within your rights to say
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
So what
yeah.
I would then say to that is, you're right. So why don't you just make more of a conscious effort to log when you are giving during the day at work? Because you're right, you do give everything, but because we think it's part of the job, like, we just do it subconsciously, and that's why sometimes we might get resentful and be like, "You know what? I've given everything. I'm tired." But actually, and this could also linked into gratitude, I think, a bit as well,
Mm.
and being like, "Well, actually, what have I given of myself today?" And write it down or just make a mental note. Like, "You know what? Yeah, I did take some extra time with little Bob there, helping him tie up his shoes, and I helped, and that's giving."
Interestingly, I was listening to a book this morning called The Happiness Advantage, which is really interesting.
Oh.
And he was talking about how, our happiness in our jobs and careers is very much linked to how we view them. So if
Mm,
we're in a job and we see it as, oh God, I've got to do this job and it just pays the bills, then that will impact how we feel about the job and potentially how we do it. But he was talking about how we can reframe the things that we do. And like you say, some of those things that we do as a matter of course every day that feel like really boring, dull things, sometimes if we sit down and go, actually, if I hadn't done that piece of paperwork,
yes.
then this child may not have got that, or this wouldn't have happened. And we can kind of really pin down what I am already giving, like you said, and what the difference is that I am taking that time out to do that thing. And that in itself can improve our kind of view of the work we're doing, and the impact and the importance of it.
Yeah, and I think especially in, education, a lot of people will argue that it's a thankless job
Mm,
for whatever reason, you know? I remember, being when I was in my nursery in a school, half the teachers didn't even know where the door was to get into the nursery. Do you know what I mean? So it's kinda like, no one knows what we're doing here, no one cares, and you kinda get into that little rut, don't you?
yeah, yeah,
But you kind of do have to have that part of you inside of you to go, "No, you know what? Actually, if I hadn't have done this today, like you just said, little Sarah wouldn't have had XYZ." And making sure you're doing that for the other people, you know, your team.
yeah, absolutely. So I think, so the 5 ways to wellbeing: connect, be active, take notice, keep learning, give. These aren't like things you need to beat yourself around the head with. They are definitely not things like if you're not doing them, then you're failing.
Mm,
They're just helpful reminders. And actually, like you've already said, a lot of the things, like the giving and, the learning, you're probably doing anyway. It's about going, oh yeah, I'm doing that. And that's really positive. It's about reframing it and kind of then thinking about how can I build more of these things in. But it does entail giving yourself the grace and the time to do it as well, and saying,
mm.
actually, I do need to prioritize this, and I will stop working at whatever time, and the world won't end, and I will go to quiet practice, or take the dog for a walk, or not, or just sit and watch Housewives of something or other, whatever people enjoy.
Yeah, that was the biggest thing I learned, and actually I feel quite proud of. The one thing I did do in my 10 years was work stays at work. I'm not bringing
Mm,
anything home, and
mm.
I was really quite proud of that because for me, it was more of a spatial thing, like it's invading my space, and then that's when the lines blur, and I'll just do the work at home. I just will because 'cause I'll know it's there, and I'll just wanna do it. So I'm not taking anything home. I'm not taking any learning journals home. I will do them in the morning. I'll do them at the end of the day and just stay at work later. But for me, that was better because then there was a clear distinction between work is over here, home and me is over here.
And knowing that that's okay. In fact, we've got a teach meet coming up on this, where we're going to talk about boundaries and control and what we can do, and dealing with that guilt often that we find that we're not giving ourselves, giving all of us 24/7. So we're going to think
Teacher
about
guilt
some
is a thing.
practical tasks to think about how we deal with that.
And that big thing about, like you're saying, where it's about control as well. So much of what we do is out of our control. We
Exactly, but it
cannot
can feel like
control.
it's all in
Yeah.
our control.
Oh, yeah, and the pressure and, will make you think that it is in and it should be within your control, but we don't know how the kids are going to react from day to day. We don't know what's happening at home. We don't know what's happening internally as they develop chemicals, hormones, biology, all of that rubbish. We don't know when we're going to get the call, that just happens. We don't know what SLT maybe you're up to as SLT. You don't know what the government are going to be doing and what paper they're going to suddenly just publish and make everyone suddenly do. And then you've got to be the bad guy and tell the rest of your team, So there's so many things that is out of your control, and it's okay to be like, okay, well,
so
it's not.
focus on the things you can control. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh, this has been so lovely. Thank you,
I really
Becky.
enjoyed it. Thank you.
Well, when's this Teach Me? Because I feel like I need to sign up.
So it's the 17th of September, 7 p.m.
Yeah.
7 p.m. So yes.
And we'll be talking about boundaries.
Yeah, and control, and thinking about what are the, some of the really practical ways that we can manage some of the stuff we've talked about today.
Lovely. And that's so good for the start of the school year as well, isn't it? Right, let's get it. Let's nip it in the bud.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right. I like that. Thank you. Well, I hope this has been very useful to our lovely listeners. I'm sure it has. I'm going to go and practice some mindfulness now because I need to go and do a big job. And I'm not saying that ironically. I do actually need to go and take a minute. And the dog needs a wee. So like you said, Becky, the pets are a great way of getting you back in the present, right? Because they don't care about what deadlines you got.
Exactly. They do not care. Brilliant. No. Well, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day. And until the next time. So that's it for today's episode. I hope you really enjoyed it. If you would like to join in or would like to know more, then come and find us on our social media sites. We have a Facebook page, Facebook groups, an Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, Pinterest, and YouTube. All the links of where to find us will be in our podcast description. Come and join the conversation. And whatever you're doing today, I hope you have a great day.